All right, so let's take a look at analyzing a property with limited information. It's not uncommon to see properties, especially smaller properties that are either private sales or listed even through the MLS through a realtor to have limited financial information. So far as expenses in particular, and even sometimes income. Just the simplicity of a rent roll sometimes is not there, so you have to request that information. So I'm just going to walk backwards and kind of walk you through how I would approach that with a real life example of a property that's on the market right now. Here we are in Media, which is Pennsylvania. Here's a 4-unit property that is listed for $1 million. All right, so it's in Media. Media is a northwestern suburb of Philadelphia. It is a good location, close to transportation, close to the city, downtown area, downtown district in Media with a lot of shops, offices, restaurants. So it'll be considered a class B plus, maybe even A minus location. This building looks like it's a good condition. So what am I looking at? I'm really in no particular order. Let's kind of ad lib walk you through this. So first of all, I want to take a look at the pictures. In this case, there are photos to look at. So exterior looks above average. Looks like there's off-street parking. It looks like a parking lot in the back, which is nice to have off-street parking, especially in that location. Roof looks good. Basic lot size. Here we are inside. So standard baseboard. So that tells me right away it's probably, well, it's a hot water system. So I don't know whether it's on landlord paid yet. We'll get to that section. But usually when I see hot water, this building's probably 60s, 50s, 60s, something like that. Hopefully it's gas and not oil, just my preference. Carpeted, there might be hardwood under these floors, or might not be, we're not sure. But pretty standard. This is a average size, more of a closed off layout. So I'm thinking in my mind, all right, well, already I can probably open this up. I can put laminate floors down. Kitchens, okay, small, not uncommon for that area. It's like an apartment size gas stove. So right there, I see gas cooking, probably has gas heat as well. More than likely natural gas, not propane, just for that location and age. So this is, an average condition apartment. So the options that I would look at are, well, where can I get rents to if I made improvements to the property, if I rehab the kitchen, if I open up the layout, or do I just go the more cosmetic rehab route where I'm painting, I'm putting new flooring down, maybe put a new countertop, some appliances, hardware, or do I gut the kitchen and start from scratch? Not sure yet. All right, bathroom, clearly an original. Well, it's some improvements. You can see the vanity's been upgraded, so that's nice. This tile is absolutely original, and these shower handles. So original to the building, whatever age it might be. So it looks updated. So what I can do is either glaze these. There's glazing companies that might cost $500-700. Just depends if I'm doing the tub and the tile, just the tile. The risk with glazing is that it can cause damage. Our tenants could scratch it. If they put a bath mat down, it could actually rip the glazing off. So it is an inexpensive solution, but it's not a permanent solution. So obviously ripping this out, gutting it would be probably overboard. So in my mind, I'm thinking I might just leave it the way it is and regrout. I might glaze. I might upgrade the shower fixtures if I have access to it from the rear. But overall, it's a typical size bathroom for that location. Good size bedroom, it looks like there. Another exterior. So and let me go back to see if this is 1 bedroom or 2. So these are, again, 4 units, so quadruplex, $1 million. That's all we know so far. 1950 built, okay. And we have 4 1-bedroom units. All right, so that last room we saw was the bedroom, and 1 bedroom, 1 bath for that location. We're going to look at rental comps, but just knowing that market, you're probably for average condition 11, 12, 13, for updated condition 13, 14, 15. Just depends on how updated you get. All right, so now we're going to go down and see what information they provide. All right, so we have some details on the 4 units. So it looks like monthly rent and then projected rent. All right, so they're giving us effectively the rent roll. So we have 4 1-bedroom units. We have the levels, so it's obviously 1 or 2 units on each floor. We have 1,300, 1,325, 1,275, 1,275. So not bad. So for an average condition space with off-street parking, that's towards the higher end of the range. Might even be a little bit of space. If you do nothing else, there might be a little bit of movement up. And you want to confirm this by looking at Zillow, by looking at apartments.com. If you have a realtor that you're working with, have them pull rental comps from the MLS. You want to get a feel for similar age, similar size, similar location, rental comps, comparable rentals, and be able to back into, all right, well, based on the current condition, if I do nothing aside from just touch ups as needed upon unit turnover, is there any upside in rent? Is there any loss to lease where my in-place rents are below what market rents could be? And then the next level I would do is, all right, well, what if I made the improvements we're discussing? What if I did a new kitchen, put the new floor down, refresh the bathroom? I want to try to find more upgraded rental units, one bedrooms in that area, and see what kind of rent they're fetching. And then I can work backwards. If it's going to cost me $10,000 to make those improvements, and I'm going to get $100 more a month, that's $1,200 a year. 1,200 into 10,000 is over a 10% return. Might not be a bit on my cost. Might not be a bad idea. So those are the analysis I'm going to do when I'm looking at, all right, what improvements do I want to make? Because this has a big impact on the price that you can pay. If you're going to make a significant or have a significant rehab budget, you better be able to get a return on that investment. So I'm looking at return of cost, then I'm going to invest into the building to get the rents up higher. Sometimes it's not as worth it as you might think. So sometimes leaving it in more the condition that you're getting it with just some basic touch-ups might have a better return on your cost. All right, so they're showing projected rent of 1450, which I agree with. I think with strategic improvements, 1450 is totally feasible for that location, which again, you would confirm wherever you're at by researching the comps in your market. All right, so now we go down to, well, total actual rent is 6,200, 62,100. So let me just punch that in. I'll confirm that these numbers do add up to that. It should. I think it's automated on the MLS here. Let me go over to spreadsheet we have here. All right, so rents. Again, I have templates and analysis templates that I use. You can find them online. I don't have one to offer, but I'll just kind of walk you through just from scratch. So first of all, rent roll. So unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4. They're all 1-1s. All right, type, rent, and let's just go back to the MLS and 1,300, 1,325. Testing my memory here. I'm just going to do 2 at a time. 1,275 and 1,275. All right, let's just add that up. Oop. Wouldn't make my life easier. So monthly, oop, I didn't spell that right, but you know what I mean. An annual, so that times 12 to get annualized 62,100, and lo and behold, that is the total actual rent that they're receiving right now. So this does not account for any other income that might be coming in. So if there's coin operated laundry, if there's pet fees, any other sources of miscellaneous income, obviously not included there, but we might make an assumption for that in backing into what we could pay for this. All right, so the expenses, this is where it gets interesting, where you have to be smart about it. So I'm going to kind of walk you through every expense that, as an apartment owner, that I experience in real life. And some of them are quite variable, some of them are fixed, can't avoid them. Here we have insurance, licenses, typically meaning if there is a municipal inspection. Some municipalities, townships, boroughs require, cities require annual rental inspections or just fees in general. Some places just say, pay me $75 per unit and let us know who's living there, and that's it. Some people or some municipalities, you pay the money, they come out and inspect. They might call for repairs each year too. It just depends. You definitely want to know that before you get into ownership, because every place is different. In this case, we are in Media Borough, and gosh, I own a building there, and I can't remember for the life of me if I pay an annual rental fee or not, inspection fee or license. So let's go into, as a realtor, I have access to a database that kind of makes this easy for me, but you can find this on the municipality website wherever you are. All right, so if I go in here and just punch in Media Borough in this case, let's see. All right, and I scroll down to, that's residential resale. We're looking for rental. Residential resale, rental property. So inspection fee of $30 plus 10 per unit. A change of tenant. Rental property inspection required a change of tenant. Okay. All right. So we'll just use this. So we have $30 plus $10 per unit. So 30, there's 4 units. So we'll call it $70. So where they're coming up with their licenses of 400, I'm not sure, but we'll just go ahead and use the number that we came up with. Or we'll put the number in first and then we'll make our own assumptions. All right. So, oops. Okay, now we're gonna do expenses. All right, so let's just go in no particular. I did write this down in advance, so I was prepared. Advertising. Okay. Am I going to be advertising or paying for advertising of a 4-unit building? Probably not. There's a lot of free resources that can be used. Even apartments.com, I believe it's 1 to 4 units nowadays is still free to advertise. If you have a building that's 5 units or greater, if you consider it a commercial building, now you're paying a monthly fee, which might be a little onerous for a smaller building in that range. So for 4 bedroom, I can rent or I can list this on Zillow, Trulia, apartments.com, other sites, Facebook Marketplace that are of no charge, and we'll get it in front of the vast majority of prospective tenants in each area. You can also work with a real estate agent and get it on the MLS, which will get it out to the different websites as well. Typically, you're going to be paying a negotiated commission for that agent for their services. But if you're doing this on your own, we're going to say, or I would say, it's not going to cost anything for advertising or for marketing because of the amount of free resources that are available that I've been successful with on other buildings. All right, so we have contract services. So what is that, Sean? Good question. So that could be lawn care, snow removal, could be pest control if you have a repeating service. That's not the word I'm thinking of, but I can't think of it right now. You could have a quarterly service contract for a building this size. Maybe you don't have anything, but let's just go through, and then also janitorial. So what I mean by that is this is a 4-unit building. So there's probably common space, such common hallway. You walk in the building, there's a hallway, one apartment on one side, another apartment on the other, same thing upstairs, including the stairs. There's probably stairs to a basement. So who's going to maintain it? Who's going to clean it? So either you, the owner, you might pay a tenant to do it, or you might have a third-party cleaning service take care of that for you. Just because, especially when it's wet or there's leaves, the residents and the guests are going to be pulling that in. It's just going to start to look very unclean in not too long or not too much time. So for my buildings this size, I might have a service come through every month and just vacuum and wipe down things like that, clean, empty the trash if there's a laundry facility. All right, so that's your contract services. What else do we have? We have your, again, no particular order, your utilities. So I'll just lump gas and electric here together, and water and sewer. Get back to that in a sec. Your insurance, general and admin, which is kind of what we were looking at before with the rental licenses. Sometimes there might be a local income tax of some kind or net profits tax in some municipalities or cities. We have a legal and accounting, which this might be more appropriate to have below the line. In other words, below your after you calculate your net operating income. But to me, it's a real life expense. If I'm hiring my accountant to file returns specific to this building, there's a cost to that. So I want to account for that here. Account for the accounting here. All right, legal and accounting. We have our property management. So we'll just say management fee if you hire a third-party manager. And with that third-party manager, or not, you might have a realtor that's helping you and still be self-managing. You might have a leasing fee in addition to a management fee. We have payroll, which again, for 4 units is probably irrelevant. But for larger buildings, you might be sharing the cost of maintenance staff. That's part of your third-party manager that you're hiring. In the case of a 4-unit, it's not really going to be relevant, but it's making you aware of that, especially if you're looking at larger buildings than this one, which is only 4 units. Turnover. So as a tenant vacates and before the next resident moves in, there's going to be some cost potentially for addressing any wear and tear, touch up paint, carpet cleaning. Now, a lot of that could be baked into the lease where the tenant is responsible to cover some or all of those charges. And in my experience, it's rare that I can escape a turnover without having some out-of-pocket expenses. And some people can lump that into their repairs and maintenance, which, speaking of repairs and maintenance, I don't think we even have it yet. So let's put that in repairs and maintenance as the next line item. All right. So that could be your turnover could be part of that. I'm just going to separate it for purposes of this conversation. We have and reserves. So reserves are setting funds aside each year for capital reserves. So in other words, we're planning for future expenditures. Maybe it could be a parking lot resurfacing, a roof replacement, a boiler replacement, whatever the case might be. There's going to be future expenditures that you want to be prepared for, obviously. So rather than taking funds for cash flow today, you want to set some of that aside. So the typical rule of thumb might be $250 per unit per year. I've seen as high as $350. It just depends on the age of the building, the condition. So we'll come back to that. So that should cover pretty much everything as far as operating expenses. So let's work through this now. Let me go back to what they're reporting, and then we'll come up with our own numbers. All right. So they're stating insurance at $2,500. So let me put seller, report it, my version, or vary on, my version. All right, so we have advertising. They're reporting zero. I'm going to agree with that and say zero. Contract services, we'll just go down to each one. This is a common overlooked item as far as what is reported by the current owner. So first of all, does this have a yard where grass needs to be cut? Well, there we go. Plain as day, yes, someone's going to cut this grass. Is it going to be one of the tenants? Well, if it was a single family house, typically that would be the tenant's responsibility. With a 4-unit, unless you're specifically contracting with one of the residents to handle this or negotiate as for a discounted rent, typically you're going to be hiring a landscaper to cut the grass for you. And we noticed there was a parking lot and a driveway, so there's going to be a snow removal cost too. So let's go back to that. So what's it going to cost to cut this lawn throughout the course of a year? Well, in southeastern Pennsylvania, lawn cutting typically starts in April and goes through November, thereabouts. I usually average out to about, it depends if you're cutting bi-weekly or every week. If you can negotiate with a landscaper to do every other week, it might be a great way for you to reduce cost. Right now, all we know is that the seller is saying, well, no, I'm not reporting that at all, but clearly someone's cutting. If it's the owner, great. But for me, I'm not cutting the grass of a 4-unit building that I own. So I'm going to outsource that and make sure that it's baked into here based on to determine the price I need to pay with that included. So lawn care, a lawn that size and that location might cost me $35 to $45 per cut. And I might do it ideally every 2 weeks. Obviously, some weeks are going to be higher. So let's just say between April and October, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, it's 7 months. Might be 4 cuts per month. It's 28. Let's say we don't cut it every single week. Let's say there's 24 cuts. So 24 cuts times, we'll say $40 a cut, $960 of real life expense that would have to be paid to own this building. Snow removal, owner reporting nothing. I know that this is one of the big variables. You could have one winter season with a multitude of snow removal projects and others like last year here where there was literally nothing, maybe one. So we have to use an average, and I usually use 7 because even if it's a 2-inch snow, they're going to come out, salt, maybe shovel, and it's going to cost you money. So if I'm going to say 7 on average, and for a 4-car parking lot with a driveway, that might cost me, it just depends on obviously how heavy the snow is. But on average, $200 to clear. We'll say 150 to be a little more conservative. So these are absolutely expenses that you're not going to see on most offering memorandums or marketing packages from realtors or commercial brokers, but it's a real life expense. 7 might be a little high. It does feel a little bit high, but let's just make it 6 then. But you want to account for it. All right, pest control, nothing reported by the owner. Am I going to service quarterly for a building like this? In my experience, probably not. I have in the past, and I realize that they're so few and far between as far as pests that it's more economical for me just to pay for each service on demand. So I'm going to say 0 for, or well, I should say there's probably going to be an occasional issue each year. So we'll say 150 when a service contract might be 75, 100, $125 a quarter. And that really, it could just be money out the door that you don't need to spend. Janitorial. So let me see, let's go back to this. So you see, you have 2 units on each building. This is probably a tiny little foyer, a stairwell up to another foyer up top, entrances on either side. Pretty standard for that vintage building. So at my other buildings, I might pay $35 a month, something like that, to have a cleaning service come out. So they report nothing. I'm going to say $35 a month. Which again, I know not everybody's going to agree with, but I don't want to be the one doing it. I want to treat this like a business, and this is how I do it. I want to pay somebody to keep the place clean so that the residents aren't living in filth. Simple as that. And their guests when they come in and see, and they're proud of where they live. All right, gas and electric. Let's see who's paying what, if there's any reference to that in the write-up. All right, rare opportunity value add. Tenants pay water, sewer, and electric. Okay. Owner pays for common electric. So it doesn't mention gas. And we saw gas You see right here, heating fuel is gas. Uh, but again, it just from my experience, it's more than likely the landlord's responsibility for that gas bill. For the heat, it might be the tenant's responsibility for their particular unit for the cooking. But that heat is more than likely, well, unless it's electric baseboard. Let me see if there's thermostats in each room. Clearly, this is something that I would call the other agent to verify, but let's just go with this for now. Need to find an interior photo. All right, so it looks like hot water baseboard to me. There's a thermostat. Well, obviously, there's a thermostat. There's going to be for each unit, but that doesn't look like it's an electric thermostat. It looks like a single thermostat for the entire unit is my gut. Do I see anything in the bedroom? I don't. All right, so I'm going to go with more than likely this is a landlord paid heat and a tenant paid electric and gas for cooking only, which is not uncommon at all for this age, this setup. All right, so they reported, I think they reported anything for utilities? No. All right, so zero from the owner. What are we going to pay? And I have these, I would reference my other buildings this size to see what I have been paying, but just off the top of my head, obviously gas will be higher in the winter, lower in the spring, summer, fall. So that might average out to, I don't know, I don't know, but let's just say $100 a month, probably more than that. We'll just put something as a placeholder on water and sewer. This is going to be paid by the tenant. So unless there's coin operated laundry, which I would typically cover the water bill if I'm the owner, but there's no reference to that, so I just don't know. So we'll just say zero for now. Obviously, another reason I keep turnover separate is when a unit is vacant, the landlord, the owner, is going to be covering the utility costs. So any water, sewer, gas, electric bill will be fully squarely on the landlord's shoulders. That's another reason I want to account for that here. All right, water and sewer covered by the tenant, which is actually surprising. So that would indicate that's probably not right. So for a building with a gas boiler that's heating baseboard, for hot water to be on tenant, it would be an individual water heater, which would be very unusual for this age building. So I'm thinking it's really a summer winter hookup. The boiler also provides the hot water for the showers, for the sinks. So more than likely the landlord is covering that cost. But how would tenants be paying water? I don't know. All right, I'm just gonna go with what it says. It says tenants paying water, so I'd have to dig into that, but we'll just say zero for now. Then we put a question mark to verify with the agent on that. All right, insurance, they did report what they're paying. I think it was 2,500. 2,500. What would I pay? I mean, it's nowadays it's about $525 per unit as a rule of thumb. So let's see, 525 times 4 units, 2,100. So, and you know, in addition to that, I might have an umbrella policy that I might put over top that might cost me $300. For now, I'm going to go a little bit lighter on insurance. We would verify with our insurance broker before we finalized. All right, general and admin, this goes back to licenses, any other miscellaneous administrative fees. Not going to be much for a 4 unit. I don't think I think they did report something. Let's see. They said $400. I'm going to say $100 because it was $70 for the inspection fee each year, unless there's something else I'm missing. But all right, and then legal and accounting. Certainly, the owner is not going to report anything because this really is specific to the owner. But for me, I'm going to be paying something. Legal, I want to make an allowance for if there's an eviction and I hire an attorney, that might cost me $1,000 flat fee or $750 or something like that. And so I'm going to say, well, let me just throw $100 towards that. Depends on the area. If it was a lower class area, I might have a little bit higher allowance for this line item. Or a class B plus A minus area, I'm probably going to do little to none. We'll say $100 for legal allowance and then accounting for a tax return at the end of the year. Let's just say $500. All right, management fee. Nothing reported by the owner. So if I were to hire a third-party property manager for a 4 unit in my area, that might range from 5% on the very low end up to 7-8% on the high end. So let's just say I'm going to treat this like a business and hire a manager. I'll just say 5% of collected rents. Whoa, hold on, not 50%. That would be interesting. All right, 5%. Leasing fee, they don't report anything, but I'm going to run this through the property manager as well. So how many units each year will turn over on the one bedrooms? One bedrooms, in my experience, will turn over more regularly than 2 bedrooms. We'll just say 1 out of 4. So if I do 25% times what's my average rent? And So take the monthly divided by 4, multiply that by, let's say, half a month's rent. 161. All right, so what I did there is I'm saying 1 of 4 units will turn over each year. That's what the 25%, 2.25 represents. And then I take the monthly rental income divided by 4 to get to the average per unit rent each month, multiplied by half, which would be half month's rent to lease that. Sometimes it's a full month's rent. So you just want to know, if you have a third-party manager, what their leasing fee is. If you are self-managing, but you're hiring a realtor for the leasing, you might pay a full month's rent. It's all negotiable, something you want to speak about with your agent. But I'm gonna assume a half month's rent for 1 out of 4 units turning over each year. Payroll 0 and 0. Turnover, they're not going to report anything, although it might be bumped into the repairs and maintenance. For me, I might average $550 or like $350 to $650 per unit, just depends on location, size, things like that. But if I'm gonna have my painter go in there and touch things up, a couple $100, if I have a cleaner come in, again, these might be offset by the tenant, or you could retain it from the security deposit if there's true damage for just minor wear and tear. Let's assume of 1 unit turning over each year, that it might cost me $350. And keep in mind too, if there's vacancy, I'm going to be covering the utilities. That's a real life expense. If it's in the winter and someone shows it and forgets to turn the heat down, or I forget to turn the heat down, now my heating bill might be $100 just for 1 month. So things like that happen. All right, so we'll say 350. Repairs and maintenance, I think they reported something 2,500, which is rare. I don't usually see the owners or brokers report that, so that's nice. Or for small buildings, report that, so that's nice to see. And again, that's gonna vary. I might use 5% as a placeholder of gross income. Let's see what that spits out. 3,105, so pretty close. And I've also seen anywhere from $500 to $650 per unit. So what does this average out to? That's 776, so probably a little bit high. So let me bring that down. Thing is, like, one of the challenges with repairs and maintenance, you might go months with $0 expense in that category, but then 1 month you have several things happen at once, plumbing issues, especially in a building this old. So you definitely want to allocate funds for this, because on average, over the lifetime of ownership of that building, there's going to be a bunch of things that happen where it might average out to this. But this is going to be a very variable figure each year. All right, reserves would be nothing reported by the owner. For me, I'm going to set aside $250 per unit per year. So total expenses, you can see the major difference here. If we relied on what the listing agent provided versus what I am calculating, so I'm not using the right format here. So let's do this. And then what is that expense ratio? So I'm just kind of get it, like, just to show you the typical advertised expense ratio. So take operating expenses divided by my annual rent, and showing 8% expense ratio. Oh, no, I obviously missed taxes. Hold on. Did I not even put taxes down at all? That's funny. All right, so let's go back in and do that. This is why we use analysis templates instead of going from scratch. Right? We're just walking through this together. All right, real estate taxes. That is here, it's just in a separate section. So taxes for this building, 99.35. Oops, 99.35. I'll assume the same, probably would bump it up a little bit for the next year. Those taxes will go up a little bit. The other thing I look at for larger buildings is, all right, well, what is the county tax assessor? What do they think the fair market value of the building? What are they basing the tax figure on each year? Well, they're going to say, we think the building's worth X. They then work backwards to say, well, the assessed value. So again, assessed value and market value are often two different things, unless there was a complete reassessment done by the entire county that specific year. But usually with tax assessments, the county will reassess the entire area at some point in time, and then every year thereafter, instead of going through the hassle and expense of reassessing and inspecting every building, they're going to make an assumption based on market conditions. If the market's on its way up, they're going to say, well, we'll take the assessed value at the reassessment date and add 2% to that. Imagine that over 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Sometimes municipalities will go decades between reassessments. So really, it could be a completely inaccurate figure, higher or lower, to what you're paying for the building. So I'm just going to work backwards, kind of walk you through how I would verify that. So I'm looking for the assessed value, so 492,500 Again, that does not, so this is assessed value, 492,500. That does not, that may not reflect true market value today. I mean, it's listed at $1 million. So hold on a second. List price, 1, 2, 3, 6. I think I did one too many. Not 10 million. All right, $1 million. And they think it's worth 492,500. So if I were to pay $1 million, they might have the right. There's a threshold in each area where if you pay X dollars more than what they thought the building was worth, it triggers their ability to spot appeal, basically appeal your tax and your assessed value to get it up higher based on what you paid. So it's just something you want to quick look at. Rarely is it relevant for small buildings like this, but let's just go through the exercise so that you can see what I mean. All right, so the county says the assessed value is 492,500. Well, what do they think the fair market value is? What we're going to look at next is common level ratio, and that's the adjustment factor over time. So the assessment in Delaware County occurred just several years ago, pretty recent. But since then, in this area, the market has gone up significantly. So my expectation would be when it was reassessed, they thought the building was worth 492,500. Today, with the common level ratio, it's probably going to be worth more in their eyes. So let's do common level ratio, Delaware County, PA. And you'll typically see, yeah, for Pennsylvania, they have this guide here, which is very convenient. Make sure it's the correct year. And that's super tiny, but this is 2022, July 2023. So this is the most recent one. I look for the county that I'm in, Delaware, 1.52. All right, so they're saying that since this was reassessed, I think in 2020, 2019, something like that, the value is up 1.52 higher. So we're gonna do that. So fair market value in the eyes of the county tax assessor is 748,600. So again, if I paid more than this, significantly more, then it might trigger their ability to appeal the assessed value on the building, and there's a risk that I might pay higher taxes. If I pay less than what they think it's worth, I might have the ability to appeal and get my assessed value down and reduce my taxes. So that's the importance of that. So I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna push pause on this and see, well, what can I pay, and then I'll compare it to the fair market value, and we'll decide if that's a risk or an opportunity. All right, so that's that. So for now, I'm just going to use the taxes that are in place currently. And that puts let's make sure that it's including that there. Yep. All right. What did I do there? Okay. All right. So if I just want to freeze this, I'll just put a sign. All right. So we have. Okay. So based on the listing agent's expense ratio, what was being advertised, 24% expense rate, 25% expense ratio, unrealistic. So typically for a 4-unit building that's third-party managed, it's going to be at least 35%, maybe up. It depends on if the owner's paying or the tenants are paying the utilities. It'll be 35, 40, 45% of your gross income is what you're going to pay in expenses. I'm calculating 38%. I own a 6-unit building down the street. That's what I pay. So I'm good with that. All right, so I'm going to go with my expense figures, which then spits out my NOI, or net operating income, which is my gross income minus my operating expenses. This does not account for your debt service or your mortgage payment yet, if you have one. That's my NOI. And then I'm going to take out my debt service, which is my principal and interest. And what would that be? Well, we have to figure out what we can pay, and then we can work backwards from that. All right, so if we know the NOI is 38,324, and let's just use the mortgage calculator. Of course, for my template, it would have this built in, but for purposes of this conversation, so let's say we were purchasing for the list price of $1 million, and let's say we're putting 25% down. So for commercial loans, well, this is a 4-unit. With 4 units, it's actually nice. You can put as little as 3.5% down on an FHA if you were living there. If you're not, there might be products out there that allow as little as 5% down, even as an investment-owned 4-unit. Or I'll use the assumption of a typical bank or credit union financing might be 20, 25%. I'll say 25%. So my loan will be $750. Rates might be 7%. They've come down a bit. Before they were creeping up over 8. So 7, 7.5, somewhere like that. And I always want to make sure, yeah, this is based on a 35-year term. It's probably going to be a 25-year term, which is not even an option. All right, so for purposes of time, let's just go with the 30-year fixed rate at 7% gives me a $49.90 principal and interest payment. All right, so to annualize that, $49.90 times 12. You can see Houston, we have a problem here. All right, so NOI is 38,000. My mortgage is 59,000. So to put that in perspective, take my NOI minus my debt service, I'm losing $21,000 a year. I'm not buying the building for $1 million. That's probably why it's sat unsold for 53 days. All right, so in a phenomenal location. And that's a challenge with rates at 7%. If we go back just a couple of years when they were 4%, 35.81, might not still make money, but closer. But we're not. We're at 7%, maybe 6.5, maybe 7.5, whatever. You get the gist. So what do? Well, I can't pay $1 million, that's for sure. And this is where an analysis template would help you do this a lot faster. But for purposes of this conversation, I need my debt service to be less than my NOI to turn a profit. Makes sense? So let's see how low it has to be here. So if I go down to 650, let's see, I need to be basically, what is this per month? 31.94. My mortgage payment has to be less than 31.94. So it's 650 loan amount. I am cash flowing at least. So let's do that. 31, what was it again? 3103. Oh, I was going to say that seems off. Yeah, no. All right, so I'm still way too high. So I need to be at 3194 or less. And I'm not doing that. A loan amount of 650. Let's get out of 500,000. Getting closer. 450. 2994. So let's punch that in. See what it looks like. Right now I'm cash flowing 2396. Okay. Well, what's my total out of pocket? We can calculate a return on investment. So we have down payment, closing costs, rehab. All right, so let's assume we do nothing because I didn't look at projected rent. I'm basing this for now on in-place rents. Let's say we just take over ownership and just do basic touch-up. So I'm not going to invest additional rehab, even though I probably would. So just for purposes of, let's calculate what this return will be cash on cash. So based on what I come out of pocket with, or what I would get each year from it divided by what I came out of pocket with is my cash on cash return. My down payment was, well, to get to 2994, I was doing 450. So what's my purchase price? Equals 450 divided by 0.25. No, it's gonna be 0.75. I can math. All right. So 600,000. So $600,000 purchase price times 25% down. And then my closing cost might be 4.5% of the purchase price. I'll just say 4, and rehab will just say 0. All right, so my total out of pocket, oops, is 174,000. Based on paying 650, I'm clearing 2396 a year. So I take that divided by my out of pocket, and I am getting a 1.3% cash on cash return. So you can tell why it's challenging. And that's based on in-place rent. Let's look at what market rent could be. All right, so also known as pro forma rent, in other words, projected rent. So in place, and we'll say market rents. And I'll just say, I'm gonna go crazy. Let's say we do a full rehab and say $1,500. All right, now we're at 72,000. If we use a lot of the same here, hopefully this all carries over, let's see. Yep. How did my expense ratio go up? Okay. Now with repairs and maintenance, after I've rehabbed all 4 units, I'm going to have less risk of repair calls. So I'm going to keep it at what it would have been if I had not made as much of an improvement. But again, it's going to be somewhere in the 500 to 650 per unit range on average, at least from the eyes of a lender. So that's a good rule of thumb, $500 to $650 per unit per year for repairs and maintenance. Everything else, I think, should be about the same. Okay. And I'm making improvements that may not require permitting, which my taxes may not get jacked up from permits, but it just depends. Obviously, we want to do everything the right way. If there is, but we're going to assume that the taxes will stay the same. And then before we finalize an offer, we're going to go back to comparing to what the county looks at value to be. All right. So now I'm at 72,000, another $10,000 in income. Let's see if this just carries over too. All right, now I'm getting $47,000 a year, which would mean, let's just say that. All right, now I'm getting 6.72%. All right, so based on, but I have to factor in now, my down payment will be the same unless I pay more, of course, and my rehab, and I'll just say $15,000 per unit to do new kitchens, new bathrooms, flooring, paint, light fixtures, etc. So I'm putting, we'll just say 50,000. So putting $50,000 into the building. So my out of pocket is going to be a little bit higher now. So if I paid 650, put 25% down, I am clearing 11,690 per year divided by my out of pocket of 224. I'm getting a cash on cash return between 5 and 6%, which effectively is what a savings account or CD might be. So is that compelling for me? It might be. It just depends. But I hope that helps, just kind of walking through the, I call it the real life expenses of operating a building. If you're hiring a third party manager. Now, would this change? Would you be able to pay more if you're self-managing? Yeah, absolutely. What if you didn't have the same assumptions? What if you think the expenses will be less? Yes. I mean, you have to put in there what you think is realistic, what you're comfortable and confident with. This might be so conservative that it makes it hard to compete for buildings, but this is how the buildings that I bought, I've made these assumptions, and in reality, that's what they are. Sometimes more, sometimes less. But I want to account for these things because they do occur. All right, so gets me 5%. They're listed at $1 million. I'm paying 650. I'm probably not getting this building, obviously, but it is sitting for 53 days in a fantastic location, so it's overpriced in my opinion. Will it sell for 650? Probably not. Somewhere in between the two. But for me, the county thinks it's worth 750. I think it's worth 650. If rates come down, I can pay more. If I tone these expenses down, I can pay more. If I think I can get my rents higher after I do my rental analysis, I can pay more. My rents will be lower, I can pay less. You get the gist. So it's not just guessing at this. It's not relying on the information that the listing agent or the seller provides. You want to think this through, all these different line items. Oh, and then other income was the other factor that we didn't account for. And I would factor in other income. So my income would be higher. I would be pet friendly if there's a coin operated laundry. If there's not in-unit washer dryers or the ability to add that, I would factor that income in. And so I'm probably going to be able to pay more than 650 to get this building if I want a north of 5% return each year. And obviously you can also play with your assumptions on the debt too. So you can, if there's a product out there that you can put less down, or if you want to live in one unit, rent the other 3 out, your options are much higher. You might be able to do as little as 3.5 or 5% down. But with the negative leverage, your interest rate being higher than where the going cap rate is in the market, it's just hard to take advantage of that like we could a couple years ago. But those are all the variables that help you back into a realistic and smart purchase price that's going to help you get a return on your investment that you're looking for at a bare minimum or higher as time goes on. All right, so that is just this building as an example. My name is Sean. I'm with Timber Run Capital. If you have any questions or want to learn more about investing in multifamily real estate. So as a realtor, I do help sellers and buyers as far as selling and purchasing their apartment buildings. And also as an investor myself, I do offer syndication deals or joint venture deals where I'm raising capital from private investors so that together we can purchase buildings in the area and help you build your passive income alongside mine. So if you're interested in that, take a look at my website. It's gotimberrun.com, gotimberrun.com. Put the information in the comments below. And I look forward to chatting with you. There's a contact us form there. Feel free to input and we'll set up a call. Have a great day.